When you're building a business, you'll make mistakes. That's absolutely normal. But what you want to avoid are costly and time-consuming mistakes as much as you can. I want to share with you my most expensive mistake, which cost me $50,000 to fix and 1 year to recover from. And I want to make sure that you do not make a mistake like that. So I've been successfully running businesses since 2004. I was a CEO for a decade before I started my own business in 2014. So you could argue that I'm an experienced business person, and still I make mistakes. Let me take you back to November 2014. I had been actually 10 months in business already. My business had started to take off. October had been my first 5-figure month. And it looked like November was going to be a 5-figure month too. So you could say that things were going really well. Before that, my revenue had been going up and down from zero to a few $1,000s, on average $1,800 a month for 9 months before I started to have those 5-figure months. But suddenly a lot of money was coming into my PayPal account, and that turned out to be a problem. One day, I got an email from PayPal that due to unusual activity on my account, they had frozen it. Just like that, without any warning. I had no access to my money, and I could only receive money but not take anything out of my PayPal account. This was serious stuff. I shared what happened in a Facebook group with other female online entrepreneurs, and as it turned out, this is something that PayPal does if you suddenly have an increased influx of money. No warning, just an email that they have frozen your account. And they only unfreeze it once you've given them all the information that they ask for. And that was my problem. In order to open the account again, I had to provide a profit and loss and balance sheet statement, plus explain my business in detail, with all the information that not even my bank has ever asked for. Well, the thing is, this was my first year in online business. I had been doing my books myself. I had set everything up in a system called Xero. I had been planning to hire a bookkeeper, but I hadn't done it yet because I hadn't really been earning much money. And I thought I could wait until the first year was over. And I saw money now coming in. So this was definitely on my radar, but I didn't have an accountant yet. So I couldn't produce the information that PayPal was asking me for. And that was a problem because without that information, PayPal was not going to unfreeze my account. I was under some serious time pressure to produce those documents because otherwise I was stuck. I couldn't take out any money. So I needed to hire someone that also understood the system I was already using. I was using Xero. Xero has certified accountants that understand the system. So I went to their website. I looked up accountants that were certified in Xero. There was no one available in my country of residence and where I have my company, Switzerland. Accounting is very similar across the board. You can actually have an accountant in a different country. You still need someone from the country that you live in or operate your business in to do your tax report, and even better if they are local so they can speak to the local tax authorities in case there are some issues. I was looking for an accountant that understood Xero. I was looking for a small company, an entrepreneur. I didn't want to deal with a big company because I expected them to be more costly and complicated to deal with. I found a candidate and emailed him. Let's call him Tim. Tim was very responsive, and I always appreciate when people are responsive. So I had an offer within a couple of hours. The offer was only €70 a month or $80 a month. And I thought, that's a great deal, much lower than I expected. I looked him up, his website was up to date. He had social media profiles, they were up to date, and he had a Skype number. It all looked like he was well versed in the online business world, and that's exactly what I was hoping for and needed to have. I did contact some other companies, but they were slow at responding, and their offers were sky high, totally out of my reach. I decided to go with Tim. We agreed that I would pay for the whole year of 2014, which was my first accounting year, because he had to do the books for the whole year and check everything that I had entered and make sure we could finally produce this profit and loss and balance sheet statement that PayPal was asking for. Tim got to work, and within a few days, I had my profit and loss statement and the balance sheet, and I could send it to PayPal. And 48 hours, my account was open again, but there was a restriction. I had shared with PayPal that I sell one-on-one coaching packages that are 3 months long or 90 days. Therefore, PayPal decided that there was some risk involved. Maybe someone would want a refund or something like that, even though that had never happened. And they decided to withhold 30% of my revenue for 90 days. The period that I was doing my coaching, they would keep 30% of it, and I could only take out 60%. I remember very clearly how upset I was at this rule that PayPal had put on my account. No client had ever asked for a refund, and my coaching programs were non-refundable anyway. And still, PayPal decided on their own, and I couldn't argue this. There was no point in arguing with PayPal. So I decided to quickly sign up for Stripe, which I recommend you do if you are in a similar situation, because you want to be working with a company that doesn't behave like this. I didn't want to have all my eggs in one basket. We come back to Tim. He was now my bookkeeper, and every month I sent him my bank statements so he could do my bookkeeping. He was very shy and introverted. He was not very proactive, if we would say it, more like reactive. I worked well with him, sent him all my details, and if I saw something that should be booked differently or he asked me about it, I would tell him. So all seemed good. 2015 came along and my business continued to take off. The 2 virtual assistants that I had hired in my first year of online business were not keeping up with the growth. So I had to hire somewhat more experienced, someone that knew my system better than the previous assistants that I had worked with. So I hired 3 virtual assistants within a few months. We were all busy updating my website, putting out my membership, keeping up with new ideas, and of course, me working with all these one-on-one clients. And I was able to double the revenue of my business by adding group programs and not just having one-on-one. Things were going well. 2016 came along and my business continued to grow even more than that I had hoped for. The constellation of my team changed again. So now I prefer to work with one system more hours than having lots of different assistants. That was much easier for me. My group programs grew. I started to think about stopping one-on-one programs, and I still had a membership site. Again, I was able to double the revenue of the previous year, and still I felt there was even more growth coming. 2017 was suddenly there, and I made the goal to make $1 million in revenue that year. That meant that I had to triple the revenue of the previous year, but I felt that was doable. My husband had lost his job at the end of 2016, and now he was going to join my team and help me out. And this gave me an extra boost to have a multiple 6-figure launch in the beginning of 2017. Just after the launch, I started to prepare for our 2016 tax reports and print out all the transactions from 2016 and go through them line by line to make sure there are no mistakes in the books. I'm not an accountant. I haven't learned bookkeeping, but I find it very helpful to know exactly what's in my books so that I can potentially explain that to someone else and, I'm not at loss what's actually inside my books. So I would sit down for several hours. It typically takes me 1 or 2 days, go through the whole books for the whole year. The way I work with Tim is that if I would see something that needed fixing, I would let him know and he would fix. Typical fixes would be that something was in the wrong category. So let's say a marketing cost instead of an office cost. Very typical mistake because an accountant typically doesn't know the business as well as you do. But you want to have it in the right category so you can estimate the cost in future years. And as I was going through all the transactions from 2016, I noticed something. I noticed something weird with a credit card that I had used for only several months and then canceled. I remember there was a mix-up. We were getting invoices twice, maybe the same invoice twice, and I had, by mistake, paid an invoice twice. So I knew there had been a bit of a mix-up. So I was not surprised to see something weird in the books, but it felt still a bit off. So I decided to open up a Google Sheet and list all the invoices we get from the credit card company and all my payments, I get it, and just see if that's all correct in the books, because I got this weird feeling that it didn't look right. By creating this extra sheet, I saw that everything had been wrongly booked in Xero. I realized in an instant that Tim, who had now been my bookkeeper for almost 3 years, was a sloppy bookkeeper. A short note for anyone who might not know accounting well: all revenue and cost items need to be correctly booked. Otherwise, your books are not correct. A mistake like this can have long-winded consequences throughout your accounting. You carry mistakes with you even for months or years. So I went into Xero to see if I could discover some other mistakes. And yes, I did. There were unmatched invoices and bills that were incorrectly matched or wrongly matched. And I was in deep shock. I had trusted Tim with my books. He was a certified accountant. There I was, realizing that my books were a mess, even though they looked neat and clean on the outside for the untrained eye. "You get what you pay for" was the quote that instantly came to my mind. Did I really think that I would get a qualified bookkeeper for $80 a month? Yes, I naively thought that I could because I had really simple books, but I hope that you are learning from this too. I was about to learn a very expensive lesson. I went into a Facebook group with female entrepreneurs and asked them if they knew an experienced, qualified accountant that they had worked with them themselves and could do international online business accounting. And within a few hours, I got a recommendation. And the next day, I was talking to a potential new bookkeeper. Her hourly rate was $60, almost the monthly rate of Tim. She had good references and I felt she knew what she was talking about. I decided to take my chances and hire, let's call her Cheryl. I fired Tim and locked him out of all my services within hours. Tim was not happy. He said he had done a great job for a low price for years and I couldn't just cut him off like that. Well, I was very unhappy with him and wrote one email explaining the situation, what had really happened. I did pay him extra 2 or 3 months, so I did not feel I owed him anything. He was costing me a lot of money, what he had done. And Cheryl started to poke around and confirmed to me that my books that looked neat and clean on the outside were a complete mess. She discovered unmatched items, no correlation with bank statements. The numbers just didn't add up. This was not good, but it was going to get worse before it gets better. The same week, I fired Tim and hired Cheryl and got a confirmation that my books were an absolute mess. I got a letter from the Swiss tax authorities announcing that they were auditing my business. This letter could not have come at a worse time in my whole business life. They wanted me to send in all invoices, all receipts, everything, manual, printed, of course. And as you can imagine, I was in complete shock. I didn't sleep that night, thinking what I should tell them. What should I do? What were my options? The next morning, I woke up with a little bit clearer head and thought to myself, what can I do? I have to just contact them and tell them the truth. There's just no way around it. So on the letter from the tax authorities was a name and a phone number. And instead of emailing or sending a letter, I picked up the phone, something I don't do often. I called the woman and I explained to her my business model and what I had just found out. My books were messy. I had invested in the wrong bookkeeper and I had hired a new one. And now we needed to fix the mess. And that's something you normally don't say to the tax authorities because that is going to make them even more suspicious. But I didn't feel I had any other choice. This was just what had happened. And I wanted to do my best. I wanted to fix it. In the beginning, the auditor sounded quite strict and said she still wanted a copy of all my receipts and I should go to the post office and send it to her. And I was like, Everything's online. I actually do not keep physical copies of anything. I could give her access to my accounting system. And, after being a little bit upset about it, she said, okay. And then she asked, how long is it going to take you to fix the books? And I honestly had no idea, but I thought 2 months. So I told her 2 months. And then she said with a more friendly voice, okay, get back to me in 2 months. She shared that the audit is mainly to check if I'm expensing personal costs to the business. That's typically what auditor is checking for when they are auditing small businesses. And I told her there's a lot of travel and there's also restaurant costs when I travel, and I have home offices in 2 countries. And she said, that's all okay. But she still wants to take a proper look when the books are ready. And she might have to come to my home as well to check that I actually do have a home office and not something else in that room. It really sounded that she would be fair in auditing a modern online business that has big marketing costs. So now I wasn't too worried. I was a little bit worried, but not too worried about the audit. And I was relieved that we could get to work and fix the books. So with the official auditor off our backs, we got to work. Cheryl asked me if she just should start to fix the book from January 2017 and leave the other things behind and just do some corrections in the books. And I was like, no, I want you to redo the whole thing. And she warned me that that would be expensive and it would take a lot of time. But I still wanted. I wanted clean books. I didn't want any mess. So Cheryl teamed up with my husband, who was now helping me out in the business, and he went hunting for every receipt. And it was a lot of work. And we had to pay the bank to send us new bank statements because typically they don't keep them for 3 years. And, overall, this took a year. And from time to time, the auditor would check in. And I told her we were still working on it. And luckily, the auditor was not iffy about it. The cost of Cheryl fixing the books was at least $15,000. And this is not counting the time that I or my husband spent on hunting down receipts or statements. It was just the actual costs that we had to pay. If I had to calculate everything, it would be well over 50,000 US dollars. And in addition to fixing the books, we had to file new tax reports because they were all wrong. And that was an additional time and cost, and paying our tax advisor for that too. So luckily, the auditor waited patiently, but after a whole year, I finally gave her access to my books. She logged in twice into Xero and then asked for in-person meetings, what she had warned me about, to check that I actually do have a home office in my home. And we went through everything, and we got a new calculation from our taxes, which were minimal. Overall, this story has a happy ending. I learned from my mistake. I have crispy clean books, happy auditors that have contacted me once since then, and they didn't ask for more information or visit my home, so all is good. And now you know what mistake to avoid when it comes to hiring people. Remember, you get what you pay for. How did this video help you? Please share in the comments. And if you want to avoid some other mistakes in online business, then check out this video. If you like this video and the other videos that I am creating for you, then please subscribe and share with others who might enjoy this channel. Thank you.